Hello everyone, my name is Cody Millen and I work as a sign language interpreter in the Washington DC area. So my presentation today is on how we could apply machine learning to a very adjacent field, which is the scheduling of sign language interpreters. So the problem is that schedulers currently manually offer jobs to interpreters, just using heuristics to prioritize reaching out to interpreters who are most likely to accept that given job. So is there a problem? Yes, some time is spent manually coordinating and building the schedule, and there's also probably some trends that would be visible to machine learning, but that are overlooked by human schedulers. Is machine learning a viable solution? Yes, if we have enough of the correct data. We would need to collect labeled historical data with the features that we need in order to predict our target variable, which is the name of an interpreter likely to accept the assignment. And the third and final question for this initial evaluation, does anyone care? Yes, the scheduling team would benefit from having more time to focus on higher priority tasks, and the company overall would benefit from a more effective scheduling team. So some of the relevant factors here would include seasonality. Spring break, summertime, and the winter break are often low demand and high supply periods for interpreting because the demand for interpreting work often follows the educational or school schedules. And then conversely, months like May and September, October are often high demand and low availability periods due to many events that require interpreters, such as the fiscal year closeout for the federal government here in the DC area. Another factor is ease of travel. Some interpreters might be limited to only metro accessible jobs, or they may be unwilling to drive too far out of the area or into certain congested urban areas where driving and parking are extra difficult. Our metrics for success for this machine learning model would be, for our outcome, is time saved. So whether that's a percentage of how much faster the schedule is able to be done with the assistance of a machine learning algorithm, or a count of how many hours per week or per day are saved by the scheduling team. For our output metrics, we would go with R squared or mean average error. The outlier penalties to MSE and RMSE are not ideal, I would think, because of the binary nature of it. We're looking for an interpreter who either will accept the job or they won't accept the job. There's not really a gradient of percentage to deal with here, so the extra penalties for the outliers there don't seem very relevant here. It probably would throw the algorithm more than MAE. So the solution, what we would be doing for our machine learning algorithm, is we would want to collect a bunch of historical data and have the model examine that data to determine patterns in the feature variables such as the location, the client or the job that this is for, the time of day, and the time of year. So these are 2 lines of sample data which we could collect. And so the model would be able to identify trends. If it's given thousands of lines of data like this, it may identify that the interpreter Cody always accepts assignments for GAO, whether regardless of what the specific client is or what the start time is. Or it could identify other patterns like for the no, where it's not successful. Maybe Cody never accepts assignments at NASA, so we're going to deprioritize offering him those. Or maybe Cody never accepts jobs that start before 9 a.m., so any given job that has a start time that's not in line with that, we're not going to offer to Cody because it's unlikely that he'll take it. So the iterations of this that we could do to sort of prototype this out, initially I would want to feed it maybe 3 months of data and then measure the predictions against 1 week of the manual scheduling, the way it's currently done by human schedulers. For the full version, we could then feed the model all the available data that we have, and then also test it for outlier events, such as the seasonal ups and downs or seasonality trends that I had mentioned earlier, just to make sure that it's in line with and hopefully exceeding what the human schedulers are able to do. For our system design, this is really not going to need to be an edge system. We would go with cloud for this because latency is not an issue and connectivity is assumed. If there's no internet connection, the schedulers are not able to do their work anyways. So we're assuming connectivity, and a cloud-based system would be perfectly fine here. Similar for online versus offline learning. Recent data is not likely to affect the predictions. It's not really going to matter what happened in the last few days when it's looking at years and years of historical data. And also the immediate delivery of a prediction is really unnecessary, so we would go with batch predictions for this. The schedulers will be mostly using this to do blocks like several weeks at a time in the schedule, so there's nothing really urgent or immediate about this that would require those aspects of the system design. Potential risks for this, one is the training serving skew. So the system may generate inaccurate predictions when there are new clients or new interpreters introduced, just due to the lack of the historical data that it has there in training. It may have a hard time coming up with accurate predictions for a new variable like that. Also, we'd want to make sure we're watching out for concept drift, which could occur just as industry trends change over time. Some examples of this would be the initial wave of at-home work in 2020 would have given a different weight to the location variable. That wouldn't really have been a factor since so much stuff was virtual and online. And then also the government's order to return to office for the federal government and a lot of contractors as well in the DC area in 2025. That would then more heavily weight the location feature. That's now more important and more of a factor in whether interpreters are deciding to take or not take these jobs. Data drift also could change the overall shape of the model through time, but if we're regularly retraining it, every week or a couple months or so with new data, that should account for this and should keep the model accurate. Those little changes are not going to be visible. They're only going to be visible over months and months. It's not going to be something instant. And we can also experiment with pruning the data to just recent periods. So for example, the trend where everything went virtual back in 2020, that's no longer the case with current data that would be being fed into the model. So maybe a more recent model limited to just the last 2 or 3 years of data would result in more accurate predictions rather than including all of the available historical data. Thank you for watching.